The lecture hall was the coldest place on orbital campus Xylos. It was not cold in temperature. The air was kept at a perfect, comfortable level for all species. The cold came from the feeling of the place. It was a place of judgment. The walls were a dark, polished metal that reflected the dim blue light. The seats rose in a steep curve so everyone could look down on the central stage. It was designed to make the person speaking feel small and exposed. Today, the person feeling small was a young man named Minsu. He was a human, one of only a few at the Galactic University. He sat perfectly still, his hands flat on the cool surface of his desk. He was trying to be invisible. The one speaking was a Valorian cadet named Kalen. Kalen was not small. He was massive. He stood over 2.5 meters tall. His body was covered in thick, interlocking plates of a natural bone-like armor. It was the color of dried blood. His face was hard and angular, with multifaceted eyes that shone with a sharp, intelligent light. Valorians were a powerful species in the Galactic Concord. They were famous as warriors. Their culture believed that strength was everything. Physical strength proved mental and moral strength. If you were weak, your ideas were weak. The class was advanced xenobiology. The topic was predator and prey behaviors across known space. Kalen was not the teacher. The teacher, a gentle plant-like being named Professor Phyton, was currently silent. Kalen had taken over the lesson. This was not unusual. When a Valorian felt inspired to teach, others were expected to listen. And so we see. Kalen's voice boomed, a low sound that vibrated in Minsu's chest. The clear patterns of a prey species. They are defined by fear. A constant low-level fear that dictates every action. They huddle together. They startle at small sounds. Their evolution is not about becoming better, but about becoming better at hiding. Kalen's large, four-fingered hand swept in a gesture that included Minsu and the other two humans in the room. There was a soft shuffling sound from the other students. They were from many different worlds, insectoid thrick, avian rill, and others. They watched with quiet interest. To them, this was just another day. The strong taught the weak. Minsu kept his eyes on his desk. He repeated the words from the human embassy in his head. Be calm, be patient. We are guests here. We are here to learn, not to fight. Every interaction is a diplomatic one. He took a slow, quiet breath. You, Kalen said, his focus narrowing onto Minsu. The Valorian took 2 heavy steps, his feet clanking on the floor. He stopped directly in front of Minsu's desk, looming over him like a mountain. You are a perfect example. Look at you. You are not even looking at me. Is it respect? Or is it fear? Minsu did not look up. He could feel the heat from Kalen's body. He could smell a dry, dusty scent like old stone. I asked you a question, Kalen said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. Slowly, Minsu lifted his head. He met the Valorian's many-faceted eyes. It was like looking into a kaleidoscope of cold blue light. It is respect, Minsu said, his voice softer than he wanted it to be. Kalen laughed. It was not a kind sound. It was the sound of rocks breaking. Respect, you lie. Your entire biological history is a lie of fear. Your planet was not ruled by great predators you learned to conquer. You were chased by them. You hid in caves, you ran. Your kind never learned to stand and fight with honor. You learned to trick, to hide, to throw rocks from a distance. You are a species of clever prey. Minsu's jaw tightened. He could feel his face getting warm. He looked back down at his desk. Do not engage, endure. Look at me when I am educating you, Kalen commanded. Minsu forced his head up again. The Valorian's face was now very close. Your heart is beating very fast, human. I can almost hear it, Kalen whispered, the sound carrying through the silent hall. That is the fear response. Your body is screaming at you to run, but there is nowhere to run. So you sit, you freeze, just like your ancestors did in the tall grass when the predator was near. It is in your blood. It is in your bones. Kalen straightened up and turned slightly to address the class again. This is the prey species mentality of Terra. It is a psychological weakness that has shaped their entire civilization. They build walls not to show their strength, but to hide their weakness. They create laws not to promote justice, but to protect themselves from each other. They are a fragile, fearful people. The words cut deeper than any physical blow. Minsu had heard versions of this before, but never so clearly, so publicly. He thought of human history, of great explorers sailing unknown oceans, of scientists unlocking the secrets of the universe, of artists creating beauty from nothing. He thought of his parents who had worked so hard to get him this chance. Was that all just fear? And because they are so fragile, Kalen continued, turning back to Minsu with a dismissive sneer. They break easily. The Valorian moved faster than something so large should be able to move. It was not a punch meant to injure seriously. It was a backhanded slap, a casual, contemptuous gesture. The hard, chitinous edge of his hand connected with the side of Minsu's face. The sound was loud and sharp in the quiet room. Pain exploded through Minsu's head. His vision flashed white. The force knocked him sideways out of his chair. He landed on the cold floor, his ears ringing. A hot metallic taste filled his mouth. He touched his lips and his fingers came away red with his own blood. He lay there for a second, stunned. The cold floor felt good against his burning cheek. He heard a few clicks and chirps from the audience, not of concern but of interest. This was a new data point. Professor Phyton made a soft, rustling sound. Cadet Kalen, perhaps that was— It was a lesson, Professor, Kalen interrupted, not taking his eyes off Minsu. A physical demonstration to complement the theory. The fragile body of the prey so easily damaged. Kalen looked down at Minsu on the floor. There was no anger in his eyes now. Only a calm, absolute certainty. He had proven his point. He turned away, his heavy footsteps beginning to move back toward the center of the stage. Something inside Minsu broke. It was not a loud break. It was not a surge of rage. It was a quiet, final snap. The embassy's words vanished from his mind. The fear vanished, replaced by a strange, clear emptiness. The insults, the condescension, the constant pressure of being seen as less. It all boiled down to this single moment. Lying on the floor, bleeding while his attacker walked away as if he had simply swatted a fly. It was the walking away that did it. The sheer absolute lack of consequence. Minsu pushed himself up. His body felt light. His face throbbed with a dull, hot pain. He got to his feet. His chair was on its side. He righted it without looking. His eyes were fixed on Kalen's broad, armored back. The Valorian was still talking. And so we see, true strength is not just power, but the willingness to use it to enforce natural order. Minsu took a step forward, then another. He wasn't thinking. His body was moving on its own. He saw a spot on Kalen's lower back, just above the waist. It was where two large plates of armor met in a vertical seam. In his xenobiology studies, he had read a human report on Valorian physiology. It was just a footnote. The report suggested that this particular seam, while still heavily protected, was a minor neural cluster. A pressure point. It was not a weakness, just a slightly less strong point. Minsu made a fist. He remembered his grandfather back on Earth, teaching him how to throw a punch in their small backyard. Don't lead with your arm, Minsu. Put your whole body into it. From your feet, up through your legs, twist your hips, then your shoulder. The arm is just the delivery. Kalen was completely unaware. He had dismissed the human from his mind. The prey was down. The lesson was over. Minsu did not shout. He did not roar a challenge. He simply followed his grandfather's old lesson. He planted his back foot. He pushed off, twisting his hips and shoulders. He put every ounce of his weight, his frustration, his shame, and his broken pride into the motion. His fist, clad only in the thin fabric of his campus uniform, flew forward and landed squarely on that seam in Kalen's armor. The impact jarred his arm all the way to his shoulder. A sharp, sickening pain shot through his hand. He felt something crack in his knuckles. The punch did not knock Kalen over. It did not even make him grunt in pain. To the Valorian, it probably felt like a firm tap, but it was a tap that should not have happened. Kalen stopped talking mid-sentence. The entire lecture hall froze. The air itself seemed to solidify. The gentle rustling from Professor Phyton stopped. The quiet clicks and chirps from the other students ceased. Kalen's broad back went rigid. Very, very slowly he turned around. The movement was stiff, mechanical. His multifaceted eyes were wide, the cool blue light within them now blazing with a new hot emotion. It was more than surprise. It was a world-shattering, universe-breaking shock. Mixed with it was a pure, undiluted fury. He looked down at his own back as if to confirm what had just happened. Then his gaze moved to Minsu's fist, which was already starting to swell and turn red. Finally, his eyes locked on Minsu's face. The silence in the hall was absolute. You could hear the faint hum of the station's gravity generators. Kalen's voice, when it finally came, was not a roar. It was a low, venomous hiss that was somehow more terrifying. "You," he breathed. The word was thick with disbelief and rage. "You, vermin." In that one word, Minsu heard his fate. He had done the unthinkable. He had broken the unspoken rule. A human had struck a Valorian. He had not just challenged Kalen. He had challenged the entire Valorian view of the universe. And for that, there could be only one outcome. Minsu stood his ground, cradling his broken hand against his chest, waiting for the end to come. The silence in the lecture hall did not last. It was broken by a single, sharp sound from Professor Phyton. It was a sound of alarm, like the rustle of dry leaves in a storm. The sound seemed to unlock the room. Kalen took a single, heavy step forward. The floor vibrated. His large hand with its thick, sharp claws reached for Minsu. There was no technique in the movement. It was pure, raw intention. He was going to grab Minsu and break him in half. But Professor Phyton was suddenly there, the plant-like being moved with surprising speed, placing his slender, bark-covered body between the giant Valorian and the human. "Cadet Kalen!" His voice was firm, a reedy whistle. "Stand down. Campus regulations." For a moment it seemed Kalen would shove the professor aside. His eyes burned with a fire that promised destruction. But the word regulations seemed to pierce the haze of his anger. His hand stopped, hovering in the air. His chest heaved with ragged breaths. The other students began to murmur. Soft clicks and whistles filled the air. They were not sounds of fear, but of intense interest. This was an event without precedent. They were all recording it, their personal devices capturing every second. 2 campus peacekeepers arrived. They were a bipedal species with sleek gray skin and large, calm eyes. They did not carry weapons. Their presence was usually enough. They moved to stand near Kalen and Minsu, their posture neutral but watchful. "Human Minsu," one of the peacekeepers said, its voice a soft monotone. "You will come with us. For your own safety." Minsu was still standing in the same spot. His right hand was a ball of throbbing pain. He could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. He looked from the peacekeeper to Kalen's murderous gaze. He gave a single numb nod. As he was led away, he did not look back. He could feel the weight of every eye in the room on him. He walked past the other students. Their multifaceted eyes, their feathery sensors, their smooth visual organs all followed him. He was a specimen. A problem. He was taken to the human sector of the campus. It was a small, self-contained area. The air here was circulated with a slightly different mix, more to human preference. The lights were warmer. It felt like a cage. The head of the human diplomatic mission was a woman named Gina. She met him in a quiet room with soft chairs. She did not look angry. She looked tired. Deeply, deeply tired. She looked at his hand, which was already swollen and turning a dark purple. A medical droid was called. It scanned his hand and sprayed a cooling gel on it. The droid wrapped it in a clean white bandage. 2 metacarpal fractures, the droid stated in a flat voice. Recommend rest and no impact for 20 standard cycles. When the droid left, Gina sat down opposite him. She did not speak for a long time. She just looked at him. "Tell me what happened, Minsu," she finally said. Her voice was quiet, Minsu told her. He told her about the lecture, about Kalen's words, about the slap that knocked him to the floor, and about the punch. When he finished, the room was quiet again. Gina let out a long, slow breath. She leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "Minsu," she said, "what were the instructions given to every human student on this campus?" Minsu looked at the floor. "Do not provoke, endure. We are here to learn, not to fight." "And what did you do?" Gina asked, her voice still calm. I provoked," he whispered. "You did more than provoke," Gina said. "You committed an act of physical violence against a member of a species that considers such an act from a lesser being a capital offense. The Valorian delegation is already demanding your expulsion. They are using a term I do not like, punitive correction. It means they want to take you to their world to face their justice." A cold dread filled Minsu's stomach. "What will happen?" "I don't know," Gina said honestly. "The Galactic Concord rules are clear. While on a neutral campus, local law applies. But the political pressure, it is immense. For now, you are confined to the human sector. You will not attend classes. You will not go to the common areas. You are suspended until this is resolved." Minsu nodded, his throat tight. He had thrown away everything. His education, his future, maybe his freedom. You have made things very difficult, Minsu, Gina said, standing up. Not just for yourself. For all of us. You have given them exactly what they wanted, proof. In their eyes, you just proved that humans are ruled by animal emotion, that we are unstable, unpredictable, a danger. She left him alone in the quiet room. The walls felt like they were closing in. He had tried to stand up for himself, and he had lost everything. The story spread across the campus faster than any virus. It was the only thing anyone talked about. In the dining halls, in the recreation domes, in the dormitories, the tale of the human who punched. To the other species, it was a fascinating, shocking story. It confirmed their deepest suspicions about humanity. They were irrational. They were volatile. They did not understand their place. The Valorian narrative was accepted without question. The human had been corrected, and it had responded with madness. To the small group of human students, the story was different. They saw Minsu as a hero, a symbol. He had done what all of them had wanted to do at some point. He had fought back, but their admiration was mixed with a deep fear. They knew the cost. They saw Minsu's empty seat in classes. They heard the whispers. Their own lives became more difficult. The condescending looks became colder. The casual bumps in the hallway felt more intentional. Minsu's act had drawn a line, and every human was on the wrong side of it. One of these humans was Yuna. She was Minsu's roommate. She was a quiet girl who spent most of her time in the archives. She was not like the others. She did not join in the angry discussions in the common room. She did not call Minsu a hero. She just watched and listened. Yuna was small and moved very quietly. She had dark hair that she often hid under a hood. Her eyes were calm and saw everything. While others studied engineering or stellar physics, Yuna studied things no one else cared about. Xenopsychology, galactic law, the history of conflict resolution among the founding species. 2 days after the incident, she went to see Minsu. He was allowed to have visitors in his small room. He was sitting on his bed, staring at the wall. His bandaged hand rested on his knee. He looked pale. Yuna entered without a word. She sat on the chair at his desk. She did not speak for a while. She just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said, "Your hand is broken." Minsu looked at his bandages. "Yes, you should not have done that," Yuna said. Her voice was soft, but the words were direct. Minsu felt a flash of anger. "What choice did I have? Let him talk about us like that? Let him hit me?" "You gave him exactly what he wanted," Yuna replied, her dark eyes steady on him. "You played his game. You tried to fight him on his terms, with strength, and you lost. You proved his point. He is strong. You are weak. Your punch did not hurt him. It only hurt you. So I should have just taken it." Minsu's voice was rising. "Been a good little prey animal?" Yuna shook her head slowly. "No, but you do not win a war of dominance by fighting the way the dominant one wants you to fight. You do not charge a wall. You find a way around it, or you find the one loose brick and you pull it out." "What does that mean?" Minsu asked, frustrated. "It means you were thinking with your fist," Yuna said, "not with your head." She stood up to leave. She paused at the door. "The stain of his dishonor is on you now. He hit you and you fell. Then you hit him and you fell again. He has all the power. But it doesn't have to stay that way." She left, closing the door quietly behind her. Minsu was left alone with his pain and his thoughts. He looked at his broken hand. He thought about Yuna's words. She was right. He had lost, completely. He had not changed anything. He had just made it worse for everyone. He felt a deep shame. Not for punching Kalen, but for failing, for being so weak that his best attack was nothing. He was a joke. The human who punched was a cautionary tale, not an inspirational one. Later that night, a formal message arrived on his personal data pad. It was from the office of the Valorian head cadet. It was written in the harsh angular script of the Valorian language with a translation below. It was a challenge. A Kethvar, a duel. The terms were simple. It would happen in 3 days in the Grand Amphitheater. It was a fight until first blood was drawn. The message explained that in Valorian culture, first blood was not a single drop. It meant until one combatant could no longer stand, or until their blood painted the designated circle on the floor. Minsu read the words over and over. His blood ran cold. This was not a school fight. This was a ritual. A public execution. He had no choice. If he refused, the Valorians would declare that every human was without honor. They would be marked as permanent cowards. The human embassy could not protect him from this. It was a cultural demand. To refuse was to admit that everything Kalen said about them was true. He was trapped. He had to go into that ring with his broken body and face a monster. He would lose. He would bleed. And everyone would watch. He sent a one-word reply. Accepted. He then lay down on his bed and stared at the ceiling, waiting for the end. He had landed the first punch in class. Now he would provide the crimson on the floor. The grand amphitheater was full. Every seat was taken. Students from every species in the galactic concord were there. The air hummed with the sound of thousands of voices. It was not the sound of a happy crowd. It was the low, excited buzz of people waiting for a spectacle. They were waiting to see a show. In the center of the huge space was a wide white circle painted on the dark floor. This was the ring. This was where the HFY would happen. Around the ring stood Valorian cadets. They stood at attention, their red armor shining under the bright lights. They were the honor guard. They were there to make sure the rules were followed. High above, in a special viewing box, sat the important people. The Valorian ambassadors were there. They were large and serious. The head of the campus was there, a being with long tentacles that moved slowly, and Gina, the human diplomat, was there. She sat very straight, her hands folded in her lap. Her face showed no emotion. A door opened on one side of the amphitheater. Kalen walked out. The crowd made a loud sound. It was a sound of approval. He looked bigger than ever. His red armor was polished until it gleamed. His claws were out, sharp and deadly. He walked to the edge of the white circle and stopped. He raised his arms to the crowd. The sound grew even louder. He was a hero. He was here to defend his people's honor. He turned and looked across the empty ring towards the other door. Everyone else looked too. They waited. The buzzing of the crowd grew quieter. They were curious. What would the human do? How would he face this? The other door opened. A small figure walked out. It was not Minsu. It was Yuna. A wave of surprise went through the crowd. There were confused clicks and whistles. Who was this? Where was the human male? Yuna walked calmly into the bright light. She wore a simple black suit that fit her closely. It was not armor. It was just a soft, strong fabric. She had no weapons. Her hands were empty. Her dark hair was tied back simply. Her face was calm. She did not look at the crowd. She only looked at the white circle ahead of her. She walked to the edge of the circle and stopped. She stood across from Kalen. The difference between them was huge. He was a giant of muscle and armor. She was small and seemed very fragile. The Valorian proctor, an older Valorian with gray marks on his armor, stepped into the ring. He looked from Kalen to Yuna. His face was hard. The challenge was issued to the human Minsu, the proctor said, his voice echoing in the quiet arena. Yuna's voice was clear and firm. It did not shake. The human Minsu is injured. His primary striking limb is broken. To fight him now would not be a true HFY. It would be an execution. It would bring no honor to the victor. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. I have invoked the right of equitable contest. I stand as his champion, unless the Valorians fear to fight a human female. She did not say it as a shout. She said it as a simple fact. But the insult was perfect. To refuse would be to admit fear, to back down from a creature half his size. Kalen's pride would not allow it. Kalen let out a loud, harsh laugh. The sound bounced off the walls. He looked at Yuna with utter contempt. So be it, he boomed. The little water ghost wishes to share her friend's fate. You will both wear the crimson mark of your inferiority. I will not hold back simply because you are small. The proctor looked at Kalen, then at Yuna. He nodded. The challenge is accepted. The champion is recognized. The HFY will proceed. He stepped back out of the circle. Fight until first blood is drawn. Begin. A deep bell sound echoed through the amphitheater. The fight started. Kalen did not wait. He charged. It was not a careful move. It was a blast of raw power. He came across the white circle like a crashing ship. His intention was clear. He would end this in one blow. He would smash her, and it would be over. The crowd leaned forward. Gina, in the high box, closed her eyes for a second. Yuna did not move. She stood perfectly still. She watched him come. Her body was relaxed. Her knees were slightly bent. At the very last second, when it seemed his body would crush her, she moved. It was not a jump. It was not a dodge. It was a shift. She turned her body sideways and moved 1 foot back. She was like water flowing around a stone. Her hand came up and touched his charging arm, not to stop it, but to guide it. Kalen thundered past her. The wind from his movement ruffled her hair. He stumbled, thrown off balance because he had expected to hit something. He caught himself at the edge of the circle and spun around. His eyes were wide with surprise, then anger. The crowd murmured. That was not what they expected. Kalen roared. The sound was full of fury. He attacked again. This time he used his claws. He swiped at her with a hand that could shred metal. The movement was fast and deadly. Yuna flowed backwards. She did not run. She took small, quick steps. His claws whistled through the air inches from her face. She leaned away from another swipe. She moved her head to the side to avoid a third. She was not fighting. She was avoiding. She was watching. He was fast, but his movements were big. He put all his strength into every attack. He expected his armor to protect him. He expected his power to win. He did not think he needed a plan. Yuna had a plan. She was studying him. She saw how he moved. She saw that he always led with his right side. She saw that before a big swipe, his left shoulder dipped down just a little. She saw that after he attacked, he was slow to get back into a safe position. He was overconfident. Kalen grew more and more angry. He was the strongest cadet in his class. He was being made a fool of by this tiny creature. She would not stand and fight. She just moved away. The crowd was not cheering as loudly now. They were watching in silence. This was not the quick and bloody victory they wanted. He stopped his wild attacks. He stood still for a moment, his chest heaving. He pointed a claw at her. Stop running. He yelled, Fight me! Yuna stood calmly in the center of the circle. She said nothing. This made him even angrier. He let out another roar and charged again. This time he changed his tactic. He did a fake swipe with his right hand and then quickly tried to grab her with his left. Yuna saw the fake. She had been waiting for it. Instead of moving back, she moved forward. She ducked under his grabbing arm. She was inside his reach where his long arms were less useful. For a moment, she was right next to his body. She did not punch him. She placed her open hand on his side near his hip. It was not a strike. It was a push. A gentle push. It did not hurt him, but it used his own forward momentum against him. With her body so close to his and his balance already forward, the small push was enough. His feet got tangled. He stumbled again, this time falling to one knee. A gasp went through the crowd. A Valorian was on his knee. Before a human, the humiliation was worse than any injury. Kalen's face was a mask of pure hot rage. He got to his feet slowly. The look in his eyes was no longer just about winning a duel. It was about destroying her completely. All strategy left his mind. There was only the need to crush. He came at her again and again. He was a storm of claws and raw power. He was faster now, more reckless. Yuna was like a leaf in the storm. She moved in small, efficient circles. She weaved and slipped and turned. His attacks came closer. One claw tip caught the fabric of her sleeve, tearing it. But it did not touch her skin. Another swipe almost took off her hair. She bent backwards, her body forming a graceful arch, and the claws passed over her. She was not getting tired. Her breathing was steady. But Kalen was... His attacks were using all his energy. His breath was coming in loud, ragged pants. The constant missing, the frustration was draining him. He was a powerful engine running at its maximum, with nothing to hit. The crowd was completely silent now. They were watching something they did not understand. This was not a fight. This was a dance. And the small human was leading. Kalen stopped in the middle of the circle. He was breathing heavily. He looked at Yuna with a new kind of hate. He had tried speed. He had tried power. He had tried tricks. Nothing worked. There is no honor in this, he shouted, his voice echoing in the silence. You run like a scared animal. Yuna finally spoke. Her voice was calm and clear, carrying to every corner of the arena. Honor is in victory, she said, not in rage. Her words were like a final insult. They broke him. All reason left his eyes. There was only a single burning thought, crush her. With a final bellowing roar that came from the very bottom of his lungs, he committed everything. He dropped his head and charged like a bull. He did not use his claws. He did not try to grab her. He simply ran at her with all his weight and speed. He was going to trample her. He was going to drive her into the wall of the amphitheater and smash her into paste. It was a stupid, reckless move. It was the move of someone who had completely lost control. It was the move Yuna had been waiting for. She did not try to get out of the way at the last second this time. She did not flow to the side. As the giant armored form thundered towards her, she dropped. She dropped her body so low that she was almost lying on the floor. She slid forward directly between his legs. The crowd saw her disappear under him. They expected to hear a sickening crunch, but there was no crunch. As she passed between his legs, her right hand shot upward. Her fingers were not in a fist. They were stiff, held tight together like a spear. She did not aim for his armor. She did not aim for his legs. She aimed for the one place that was vulnerable on almost every bipedal species in the galaxy, the small soft spot where the skull met the top of the spine. Her strike was not powerful in the way of a punch. It was precise. It was fast. It was a needle of focused force delivered to a single critical point. It was not an attack meant to bruise or cut. It was an attack meant to disrupt. To overload the nervous system, Kalen's charge turned into a stumble. His legs, which had been pumping with so much power, suddenly turned to water. There was no signal from his brain to his muscles. His eyes went wide with shock. He could not feel his body. He crashed to the floor. It was not a graceful fall. It was a collapse. His massive body hit the hard surface with a heavy, dull thud. He lay there, completely still. His eyes were open, but he could not move. He could not even blink. He was paralyzed. The silence in the amphitheater was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. Yuna stood up. She was calm. She was not even breathing hard. She walked over to Kalen's huge, twitching form. She looked down at him for a moment. There was no smile on her face. No triumph. There was only a cold, quiet finality. She knelt beside his head. From a small pouch on her belt, she took out a data spike. It was a thin, sharp tool used for repairing computer ports. It was not a weapon. She held his head steady with one hand. With the other, she used the sharp point of the data spike to make a small, clean cut on his cheek just below his eye. A single drop of thick, blue Valorian blood welled up from the cut. It gathered for a moment, then fell. It landed on the pristine white floor of the arena with a soft, almost silent splat. A single drop of crimson blue on the pure white floor. The single drop of blue blood was a small thing. On the white floor, it looked like a tiny jewel. But in the silence of the amphitheater, it was the loudest sound anyone had ever heard. No one moved. No one breathed. They all stared at the giant Valorian lying helpless on the floor. They stared at the small human girl kneeling beside him. The scene was impossible. It made no sense. The strong was on the ground. The weak was standing over him. Yuna stood up. She looked at the Valorian proctor. The old Valorian was frozen. His mouth was slightly open. He could not process what he had seen. "The duel is to first blood," Yuna said. Her voice was still calm. It cut through the silence like a knife. "The terms are satisfied." She turned her head. She looked up at the high viewing box. She looked directly at the Valorian ambassadors. Their faces were stone, but their eyes were wide with a mixture of horror and disbelief. Then she turned her gaze to the crowd. She looked at the thousands of students from 100 different worlds. She saw their confusion, their shock. She spoke to them. Her voice was not loud, but it was clear and carried to the very back of the huge room. "Humanity does not seek dominance," she said. "We never have." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But we will no longer be prey." She looked down at Kalen's motionless form. "You judged us by our biology. You saw that our skin is soft. You saw that we have no claws. You saw that we are small. You decided this meant we were weak. You decided this meant we were afraid." She looked back at the crowd. Her dark eyes were serious. "You were wrong. You looked at our bodies, but you never understood our minds." The first punch, Sonshi said, and everyone knew she meant Minsu's punch in the classroom, was a question. It was a cry of anger. It was a human asking, Why do you treat us this way?" She gestured to the drop of blood on the floor. To the paralyzed warrior, "This is our answer." She did not say anything else. She turned and began to walk away. She walked calmly across the white circle, past the stunned Valorian honor guard, and towards the door she had entered from. As she walked, the spell was broken. The crowd erupted into sound. It was not cheers. It was not boos. It was a chaotic wave of noise. Thousands of voices all talking at once, clicking, whistling, shouting in confusion and amazement. In the high box, the Valorian ambassadors were on their feet. One of them was speaking angrily into a communicator, demanding medical help for Kalen. They did not look at Gina. The human diplomat had not moved. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, but her face was set in a look of fierce, proud relief. The campus peacekeepers finally moved. They went to Kalen. A medical team rushed into the ring with a floating stretcher. They carefully rolled the massive Valorian onto it. He was still paralyzed. His eyes stared blankly at the ceiling. They took him away. The crowd slowly began to leave their seats. The show was over, but the talking was just beginning. Back in the human sector, Minsu was watching a live feed of the duel on his datapad. His hands were shaking. When Yuna slid under Kalen, he had gasped. When Kalen fell, his mouth fell open. When Yuna drew the single drop of blood, he felt a shock go through his whole body. He watched her speak. He heard her words. The first punch was a question. "This is our answer." He understood now. He finally understood what she had meant. He had been thinking with his fist. She had been thinking with her mind. He had tried to break a wall by hitting it. She had found the one loose brick and pulled it out. The entire wall of Valorian superiority had just crumbled. The door to his room opened. Yuna walked in. She looked exactly the same as when she had left. Calm, quiet, a little tired. For a long moment, Minsu could not speak. He just looked at her. You won," he finally said, his voice a whisper. Yuna shook her head. "No, I ended it." She sat down on the chair. "Winning would mean we wanted to be like them. We don't. We just wanted the bullying to stop." "How did you do that? How did you know how to beat him?" "I studied," Yuna said simply. "While you were all getting angry, I was in the archives. I read about Valorian biology. Their armor is amazing, but their nervous system is not so different from ours. I read about their culture. Their greatest strength is their pride. It is also their greatest weakness. I did not fight his body. I fought his mind. I let his own anger defeat him." Minsu looked at his own bandaged hand. He thought about his own hot, useless anger. "I was a fool," he said. "You were human," Yuna replied. "There is a difference, but now we must be smarter." The next day, the entire campus was different. It was like the air had changed. When the human students walked to their classes, no one bumped into them. The other students moved out of their way. The looks were no longer condescending. They were looks of caution, of respect, and in some cases of fear. The story was everywhere. It was not called the human who punched anymore. It was called the Stillwater Victory. The name Yuna was known by everyone. The Valorian delegation was quiet. They had gotten their duel. They had gotten their first blood. They had lost. There was nothing in their rules, in their entire philosophy, to explain what had happened. A human without weapons, without armor, had defeated their best young cadet without even hurting him. She had just stopped him. It was a kind of power they did not understand, and that scared them more than any weapon. A meeting was held between the Valorian ambassadors and Gina. It was a short meeting. The Valorians dropped all demands against Minsu. His suspension was lifted. The matter was considered closed. A week later, Minsu was back in his xenobiology class. The room was tense when he walked in. He went to his seat and sat down. Professor Phyton gave him a small, gentle nod. Kalen's seat was empty. It was said he had been sent back to his home world. His paralysis had worn off after a few hours, but his spirit was broken. His shame was too great. The class began. No one tried to take over the lesson. The other students listened quietly. When Minsu raised his hand to answer a question, the professor called on him. His answer was correct. No one laughed. After class, a Thrick student with a hard shell and many legs approached Minsu. Its clicking voice was hesitant. Your friend," the Thrick clicked. The female. What she did, it was not strength. Minsu looked at the alien. What was it then? The Thrick was silent for a moment, thinking. It was control, it finally said. It was a different kind of power. We did not know humans had this. Now you know, Minsu said. The Thrick clicked its mandibles in a gesture that might have been respect, and then walked away. Minsu walked back to the human sector. He found Yuna in the common room, reading a data slate as usual. She was studying ancient Earth philosophy. He sat down across from her. "They're afraid of us now," he said. Yuna put down her data slate. "I know. Is that better?" Minsu asked. "Is fear better than contempt?" "It is a start," Yuna said. "It is a space for us to breathe. Now we have to show them what we do with that space. We have to show them that we are not just the still water that can become a flood. We are also the water that nourishes, that helps things grow. We have to be more than just warriors." Minsu nodded. He understood. The fight was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had made its point. It would not be prey. Now it had to decide what it would be instead. He looked at Yuna, this quiet, brilliant girl who had ended a war with a single precise cut. She had not just saved him. She had changed the future for every human who would come after them. The first punch in class had been his. It was loud and angry and desperate, but she had ended it. Not with more noise, but with silence. Not with a storm, but with perfect calm. And with a single drop of crimson on the floor, she had written a new chapter for all of them.